I was ready to follow D9. He wanted to be in the military, but he went to the Air Force instead.
I knew it. That was happening.
I have no expertise in mental health, but I've got a lot of experience dealing with warriors who have been struggling with mental health. How I got started is I started a camp for kids a number of years ago before I even retired from the Marine Corps, basically working towards working with at-risk kids. Since I had this camp, this high adventure camp in Pennsylvania, I started doing sessions, week-long sessions with warriors who were struggling with a lot of things. I guess the predominant thing was with mental health issues. I got pulled into the mental health arena when I had some mental health professionals. Dr. Nash, who's a renowned psychiatrist, who attends every one of our sessions, pulled me in about 4 years ago. In fact, the project I'm working on now has a larger portfolio than the Marine Corps, and it's sponsored by D9's office at the Pentagon. I've known D9 for a number of years. I went to him because I was working on some projects for the Marines and the Army for Iraq and Afghanistan. And I explained to him that we got a real problem now with mental health issues. We got a real problem with the covenant of trust with clinicians and the warrior. They aren't divulging to the clinician the stressor that created the problem to begin with. And so we worked on these seminars relative to building a team concept around the warrior, so he or she would then be more apt to share with the clinician, be it a psychologist or psychiatrist, the nature of their problems. Well, when we started this project, we started looking at his mandate to me was look at anything and everything that represented best practices, but look through. I don't want you to do research. I want you to look at things from a Marine's perspective of things that would in fact work. A lot of things might work in a clinic, but they may not work in an organization like the Army or the Marine Corps. So I spent time with prolonged exposure therapy with Skip Rizzo and virtual Iraq and virtual Afghanistan, cognitive processing therapy. All of these things we started looking at. And so what we're trying to do is identify those things that we thought would work well. We got into IRS about 3 years ago, and this is just anecdotal, but a lot of success. Not only with people with stress injuries, but people with stress already being diagnosed with PTSD. A common effect, increasing their sleep habits and patterns and whatnot, and a lot of progress. About 1.5 years ago, I first learned of mindfulness and talking to Dunford. General Dunford spent time with Liz Stanley. And I started watching mindfulness. And I spent time at the Naval Health Research Center in San Diego. And we started looking through trials. And some of their stuff is pretty compelling. And it's pretty compelling for not just for a clinician's perspective, but from a Marine's perspective. When you realize that some of these biomarkers they're looking at have some really tangible, and I think the research is going to prove this not only works with preventing PTSD, it even helps with folks who've got PTSD. But we are particularly interested in this whole issue of resiliency, the whole issue of talking about things like working memory capacity, things of that nature, where an individual, if we're going to put them through, and we've done a lot of creation of stress inoculation training in the last 10 years. In fact, D9 has been very responsible in helping us carve that. I'm an infantry officer in the Marine Corps. My last job, I had all trained in the Marine Corps. And we were building these stress inoculation therapies, training devices and whatnot. We weren't realizing we may be eroding some of their capacity for resiliency. And so one of the things that we've really picked up in recent months, it looks as if this mindfulness, in fact, really impacts that in a positive sense. It has to do with the autonomic nervous system and whatnot, and really makes concrete impact. I realized about 6 months ago that if I'm going to espouse this, if I'm going to be able to go to the Marine Corps and help them to integrate this in the Corps or the Army, then I better know more about it myself. So I likewise went to Liz Stanley, and I have done. Somebody told me 3 years ago, "Hey, you're going to meditate." I said, "You better start using drugs." I'm a high energy guy. On the go a lot. I don't need to meditate. I'm one of those guys in the Marine Corps. If I can do my run each day, I can do my pull-ups, I can do my sit-ups, I'm good to go. Well, I'm here to tell you. I have followed the whole curriculum for Liz Stanley. It really works. And for somebody, it's at 4.5 hours sleep, you're doing well. If nothing more than the sleep patterns themselves, I'm at 7, sometimes even 8 hours sleep per day. I religiously do the work on mindfulness. I did a 30-minute when sitting in my car, just like I did before I met Congressman Ryan last week. So it's all anecdotal, but I tell you, it works. I think that while I downloaded the Congressman's book, he didn't pay me to plug his book, but it's probably as well done, if not better, than all books written on mindfulness, especially chapters on the research and especially chapters on military and first responders. It really hits the long ball. But I challenged Congressman Ryan last week, because what he does in each of the tail end of each chapter, he said, now here's what you can do. And so I said to him, well, here's what you can do. I said, you can go down to the Marine Corps with us, and I'm going to expose you to Marine Corps martial arts as a potential vehicle to make sure this is going to be accepted by Marines. The real problem I have, the biggest worry I have about mindfulness is that, will it be accepted? Is it going to be touchy-feely in the Marine Corps, in the Marine's mind? In my view, when you start showing guys empirical data that it does help with your respiratory, your heart rate, it does help with working memory capacity, and what that means to the guys and gals and how they work each day, they'll get that. But still, it's going to have to be something where it's kind of integrated into the work day, where because the secret, and I've experienced this myself, if you don't do it, it's not going to work. You can't read about it, you can't talk about it, you actually have to do the exercises. I do 40 or so minutes a day, and I myself can tell again, anecdotal, but I can tell the impact. But if you don't get something in the military that will be a good vehicle for this, then it will not be accepted. I know that the Marine Corps martial arts has been a big success. Marines like belts. They like to walk around, study at wearing their black belt or whatever. And if we can incorporate this, because it's a natural, we have a display down at the Martial Arts Center of Excellence in Quantico that says your mind is your most important weapon. Well, if that's the case, then we ought to really be, integrating this into our martial art program. So I think that, in my perspective, I think it's like a lot of things we're looking at now. I think we've scored a lot of points on hyper-realistic training, whereby a Marine or a soldier their first experience in Iraq or Afghanistan will somewhat replicate the last training they've done in the immersion trainer. We've done a lot on prolonged exposure therapy. We've done a lot of virtual Iraq and virtual Afghanistan. I do believe but I think that mindfulness down the road will be one of the most significant things. And the paper I owed Frank at the end of this year, I think it'll be probably one of the most impactful things that we do. Like I said, I have integrated it into we've done 37 week-long events with Wounded Warriors. Whereas when we started this 4 years ago, we probably had 1/3 of the participants were struggling with mental health issues. We're now well over 2/3. In fact, this last class we had 22 out of 30 that were struggling with mental health issues. I'm talking about people who've already been diagnosed. As you know, on the continuum, PTSD can only be diagnosed by that condition. These are 22 out of 30 of our Marines still in active duty, ready to depart. Every veteran we're dealing with is already being diagnosed. There's no reason for them to come back to this if they're not being diagnosed with PTSD. So we've got a growing problem. We know that IRIS works. We've seen it a common effect. It helps us to establish the team around the person, gives them a feeling that the team is there for them. And so I'm here to forecast, but I think that once we insinuate the mindfulness into our week-long sessions, we're gonna have even more victory down the road. And I do predict that it will be accepted. The first bit of the trial for the Marine Corps has just been concluded. They're going to do 2 more control trials, and I will be very surprised if it's within a year or so from now. It will be a very active part of the Marine Corps. As Dean Ryan and I talked last week in his office, the idea now is how can we get the energy for this, where we can actually integrate, incorporate this across the services. I think it has a lot of connotations beyond just making decisions and readiness and whatnot. It has a lot of decisions built into just how people comport themselves and maybe day-to-day things that some of these crises we're dealing with now in the military can be, if not obviated, at least ameliorated and whatnot. I'm thankful for being here, and I would invite anybody here, if you really want to see firsthand what warriors are going through, our next session for Wounded Warriors goes in the week of 7 July. Come up. And I'll give you a challenge. V9's been up there twice, and it's really pretty impactful. But the most important thing is you'll learn firsthand some of the demons that some of these folks are living with, and you'll give you more of a realization of why we need to look at for all these different things and how impactful they can be. Thank you very much.
Take any questions? Panel.
What you've described here seems like, I understand the notion that it has to be embraced by the individual, that it's targeted to, but it seems as though there are opportunities to maybe apply what's going on here with first responders domestically, with some kids who've been raised in very difficult neighborhoods where they've witnessed things that kids should not be witnessing, and how this could maybe help their road.
Well, my perspective on that is, I started out there, I was an at-risk kid. I hate to tell you this, but I was on probation twice as a kid. I was helped. If I wasn't helped, I wouldn't be here today. I'm probably the only general officer in the Marine Corps history who's been on probation. So I started out in Raleigh to help at-risk youth. Let's prevent forest fires rather than put them out later on. Long before I read his book, but after I read his book especially, he's got a chapter on how to integrate this in the elementary schools. I think it's very, very, very useful for children. We've been doing kind of IRS and meditation type things with kids, and especially high school kids. Right. But I think that we can. I think there's a lot of utility in that, man.
Yeah, we're pushing it out in education as well. We have a social and emotional learning bill that we're pushing. And in our district, it was one of the last earmarks we were able to get. We started a mindfulness, social and emotional learning curriculum into the school districts in Youngstown and Warren City schools. And parents are loving it, the teachers are loving it, the school districts moving local money to ramp it up to the middle school and then into the high school. There are after-school programs and summer school programs. There's a magazine now, it's called Mindful, and they every couple of months publish this magazine about secular mindfulness. And there's always an education article. There's always some about after-school programs. The Holistic Life Foundation up in Baltimore. 3 kids, if you've ever seen The Wire, they're in that neighborhood doing urban gardening, yoga, mindfulness. And kids who went through the program 10 years ago are now starting to come back and teach it. So it's the same stress. Those kids, your brain's doing the same exact thing. It's reacting the same exact way. Your amygdala gets fired up, it cuts off your prefrontal cortex, your emotional system gets out of whack, and this all brings it back in. Same level. So I think these programs are essential for the education piece, the after-school piece, the summer school piece. And I think when you look at, we lose 20-30% of our kids that don't graduate from high school. I bet, this is not scientifically proven, but I bet if you put an fMRI on their brain, it would look very similar to a vet who has post-traumatic stress. So they can't learn because their brain's in stress and their prefrontal cortex is shut down. So Democrat, Republican, it's like, if we're gonna spend money on education, let's spend it to address the problem. And the problem is, they don't know how to calm their amygdala down. This does that very cheaply. So, you're right. Question?
I have a question. My name is Daryl. I'm one of the office of Congressman Glenn Thompson of Pennsylvania. And Congressman, I apologize. My boss couldn't be here. He's stuck in markup boats today.
It's okay.
But I had a question for the panelists real quick. It relates to Dr. DiGiovanni. You had talked about the need for more focus on stress reduction and resiliency within the force. And your proposal sounds like a great one to work on going forward. My question relates to, there are so many programs within the Department of Defense and VA right now. There are many dealing with almost every aspect of treatment across the barriers. the biggest problem I think we run into is that most soldiers and most veterans either don't know they exist or don't know how to access them. It's been the biggest problem. And with new programs like Comprehensive Soldier Fitness rolling out and Comprehensive Airman Fitness, which are doing a lot of the same things with resiliency and stress reduction, is there a need for another program where we should be more focusing on, either consolidation and promotion of these and saying, hey, here's where you go to get these resources, instead of adding more programs, or what are your thoughts on this?
I will tell you that you're exactly right, and I'm not advocating a new program. What I am advocating for is an institutional approach to teaching those techniques. I will also tell you that Mind Fitness is not a course. You can't just go to a Mind Fitness course and then be proficient in it. It has to be, and we're learning this also on adaptability training. I actually went down this road because I was trying to improve the adaptability and cognition of our armed forces. And what I've learned is that these kinds of skill sets are not necessarily a course. It's the way in which it's the approach that you take, which has to be distributed and reinforced constantly across the entire learning continuum. So in the end, it doesn't end up being okay, go to your Mind, because if that's what it is, it will fail, you're right. Go to your Mind Fitness course. No, it has to be integrated into everything else that we're doing. So it's not additive to what they're doing. It's just part of what they're doing. And I think General Jones, and I'll steal his thunder just for a second, he told me, look, we got so many dang programs out there, nobody knows what to do with them. And we're throwing everything that we can at all these people, and they're going like, I give up, I'm info-teak, stop bombarding me with new programs. So it's a very good point, I'm sensitive to it. That's why my policy wasn't specific to what they're supposed to do, or what program to do. Just look, we already teach military members how to be physically fit. We also need to focus on mental fitness.
Amen.
That's all we're saying. And you can do them at the same time in many cases. If you're out running, you can focus on your mindfulness training while you're running. I mean, most of us who do run, you kind of do some of that already. So it's just a matter of integrating it in and changing a little bit of the thought processes, but it's an excellent point.
To piggyback on that, I'd say that, I've studied Oscar and I've studied Comprehensive Soldier Fitness. Both of them are viewed by the warrior as administrative requirements as opposed to operational tools. I myself am a real fan of both, but neither one of them have been effective the way they should have been, the way they were originally designed. I think what our role is going to be is developing practices that we can integrate this into the military, where it is in fact is combined with something already done. Mind Fitness can do that.
Thank you.
Cool.
I was hoping you'd have a book signing.
Amazon.com. Bring it out to the office. Yeah, again, Friday, 9:30, Canon 121, if you want to come. And actually, who's doing it this week?
Hugh Bren.
Okay, the guy from Insight Mindfulness, DC, will be here doing a guided meditation. So if you want to actually see what's going on in some of these programs, these are adapted to obviously deal with the military, but this is the same principle too. So, and yeah.
Oh, sorry, Congressman. I just wanted to say I'm from Congresswoman Napolitano's office, and she's actually stuck in committee as well, so she sends her apologies, but wanted to thank you and the Military Mental Health Caucus for hosting this and all the panelists and your staff.
Thank you.
So one quick admin note, if you're not already on the Military Mental Health Caucus email list, if you could please stop by and just sign our roster right out here outside the door, we'd appreciate that.
Cool, thank you so much.